Hello, I'm Wick Porter. Welcome to WritersRain, the magazine show that highlight current projects by the creatives you want to know about. Today we're here with astronomer, historian, Dr. Virginia Trimble. Let's get to it.
Virginia Trimble, Dr. Trimble, or Professor Trimble, if you don't have your PhD. If you have your PhD in Virginia. That's a line from Martin Schwarzschild, one of the great astronomers of the mid-20th century. I earned a bachelor's degree from UCLA in 1964 and a PhD from the California Institute of Technology in 1968 when they didn't take women. Their catalog said, graduate women are admitted only under exceptional circumstances, and undergraduate women not at all. I then did a postdoc in Cambridge, a year of teaching at Smith College. Actually, that was my first job. And I joined UCI in the fall of 1971. 28 years, my husband, Joseph Weber, and I shared appointments between here and the University of Maryland. So we were at UCI January to June each year, and at the University of Maryland, July to December each year. That's a sensible solution to the two-career problem, which nobody else has ever adopted. Feynman. If you've read his Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, one of the things he mentions is the Caltech female graduate student who posed naked for him when he was learning to draw. That was me. I have a drawing in my office. In fact, it's not the original, which is on the living room wall, but I have a photograph of the drawing that he did, one of the drawings he did of me, but it's a head and shoulders, and you can tell I'm fully clothed. But he must have been pretty good, because Joe and I were, by chance, were at Caltech when there was an exhibit of Feynman's drawings, and we just wandered through it, and Joe looked at it. He said, I've seen that back before. It was a drawing of me from the rear, unclothed. I was in this Twilight Zone in the fall of 1963. They were doing their last year of new programs. They wanted ratings high so that they would be able to sell the residuals for a high price. The publicity agency, Rogers & Cowan, had the bright idea of dressing a girl in a spacesuit and sending her around. Rod Serling vetoed that. He was willing to have a girl. The girl had to be a scientist of some kind who read their scripts for scientific accuracy. And she could be Miss Twilight Zone and go to all the Nielsen cities and do morning wake-up shows and television interviews and so on and so forth. And that was me. I can still name all the Nielsen cities in order if you want them. My second-year research project, which everybody had to do at Caltech in those days, measured the Einstein general relativistic gravitational redshift of white dwarfs. Before that was done, white dwarfs are the stars that happen after stars like the sun die. And at the time the project started, under Jesse Greenstein, there were 3 white dwarfs whose masses were known. They were 0.4, 0.6, and 1 solar mass. That didn't tell you very much about the average, but by the time we finished, we had approximate masses for more than 100 white dwarfs, and the average turned out to be about 0.65 solar masses. This involved measuring glass plates with spectra of the stars taken by Greenstein, mostly at the 200-inch telescope, and he'd tried to measure them. His, quote, computer, unquote. Once upon a time, computers were women who worked for men. He tried to measure them, his computer had tried to measure them, and they both failed. And I think he expected me to fail as well. And it didn't matter, because of course, I was a young woman, I was not going to be a serious scientist, so I didn't have to have a research project that would work. It turned out I figured out how to measure them. And so 2 papers, the first one was Greenstein and Trimble, the second one was Trimble and Greenstein. And then as my PhD dissertation, I worked on the Crab Nebula, the remnant of the supernova that was seen first in 1054 by Chinese astronomers, was seen in Korea and in Japan by one person in the Arab world at the time, and apparently not at all in Europe. They were busy having the Dark Ages or something and not looking properly at the sky. So I measured properties of the Crab Nebula, mostly on plates taken, well, again, at the 100-inch telescope at Mount Wilson and the 200-inch telescope at Palomar Mountain, mostly plates taken by other people. I also took some of my own for a peripheral part of the project that didn't work very well. But I ended up with a good number for the distance to the nebula, and therefore for its mass, and when the explosion must have gone off. Fortunately, it turned out that the expansion has been accelerated by pressures of magnetic fields and relativistic particles. And when you allow for that, by golly, yes, the explosion could be in 1054. It all turned out to be self-consistent. And as I was finishing up, pulsars were discovered. And soon after I finished, it turned out there was a pulsar in the Crab Nebula. This made it a hot topic, so I got invited to give talks at lots of conferences. That's a question you get all the time. Did you ever want to be an astronaut? To which I can only say, not just no, but hell no. Do I think it makes sense to send people into space? Not really. You know, we are carbon-based. You know that, right? Okay. Your stopwatch and your cameras and all this stuff, they're silicon-based. If and when we encounter intelligent aliens, I'm betting they will be silicon-based, not carbon-based. People are too soft and squishy to go into space. We can already send instruments that do a better job of most things. And the Mars sample return, which is now costing an immense fortune for reasons I don't fully understand, but the sample was piled up by a rover on the surface of Mars, and if it's ever brought back, it'll be brought back by a robot and a return mission, not by people going to Mars. I just got the proofs today of something written with a collaborator. Her name is Michelle Penn. She will start as an undergraduate at Stanford in September at the age of 17, which is the same age I started at UCLA. She's starting in 2024, isn't she? I started in 1961. So we're setting what may well be a world record for difference in age between roughly equal authors of a paper.